I was standing in the garage, hands deep in a cardboard box full of Christmas decorations we hadn't touched in 2 years when I first admitted it to myself, not aloud, not in words, but in that silent, primal language your gut speaks when your brain's too scared to form the thought. Something wasn't right in my house. It wasn't the obvious kind of wrong. There were no lipstick stains, no sketchy receipts, no unlocked phones buzzing at 2 a.m. It was subtler, like the air pressure in the house had changed. Like walking into a room and knowing someone had just left even though everything looks the same. The walls had memories, sure, good ones mostly. But lately I could feel them watching me like they were holding their breath. It started with her laugh. I hadn't heard it in weeks, not really. Not the real one. The one that used to tumble out of her without effort like a hiccup from her soul. What I heard lately was thinner, a rehearsed sound. Something she gave me so I'd stop asking questions. Then there were the disappearing acts. A Thursday night turned into a quick wine thing with the girls, but she wouldn't get back until almost 1 a.m. smelling like someone else's cologne, not even trying to hide the smear of lip gloss that wasn't the one she left with. And that was the thing, it wasn't the evidence itself that got to me. It was the carelessness. Like she didn't even bother to pretend anymore. She'd come home, toss her bag on the couch, kick off her heels in that deliberate way and immediately head for the shower without a word. No eye contact. No conversation. Just steam and silence. I could have asked. I could have made a scene. But every time I opened my mouth, something closed in my throat. Fear? Maybe. Not fear of the truth, but fear of the moment that came after, the silence, the damage, the clean split of reality. So I did something I'm not proud of. Call it paranoid. Call it cowardly. Call it whatever you want. I ordered a set of surveillance cameras. Nothing crazy. Small, discreet, synced to the cloud. I placed them in corners of the living room, hallway, and kitchen. Areas where the story of a life unfolds. Areas where lies forget to hide. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. The first few days, it was all normal. Mundane. She made coffee, fed the cat, FaceTimed her sister. At night, she watched Netflix and barely glanced at her phone. But then on a Tuesday, of all days, a Tuesday, things changed. I was at work. Boring meeting. My phone buzzed, motion detected in the living room. I opened the feed. There was a man. Not just walking in. Not fumbling or confused like a stranger. He had a key. He used a key. Walked straight in like it was his name on the lease. Like he knew which floorboard squeaked and which cabinet stuck. He was in his mid-30s, confident, tall, wearing a zip-up hoodie and that smug calmness that only comes from being too comfortable. He dropped his backpack on the floor, walked straight to the kitchen and grabbed a beer. My beer. No hesitation. No looking around. Just complete practiced ease. I watched frozen as he leaned on the counter and scrolled his phone. 5 minutes later, she came in. My wife. Hair down, makeup fresh, wearing that same low-cut black top she told me was too dressy for work. She smiled. A smile I hadn't seen in months. And it wasn't for me. She didn't flinch. Didn't even pretend to be surprised. She walked straight up to him, placed her hand on his chest, and whispered something. He laughed. She laughed. The real one. And then she opened a drawer, took out a lighter, and lit the cinnamon candle she knew I hated. A tiny detail. A stupid little thing. But it burned through me faster than any confession ever could. She only lit the candle when she wanted the house to smell like someone else lived there. That was the moment I stopped being paranoid. That was the moment I knew I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. The footage kept playing in my head like a corrupted loop, every gesture and smile frozen, dissected, magnified. I watched her light that cinnamon candle a dozen times. It was surgical. A ritual. A preparation. I'd always thought betrayal would feel like fire, rage, explosion, something loud. But it wasn't. It was cold. Like falling through ice. Quiet. Suffocating. By morning I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to learn everything. I called in sick from work for the first time in 2 years. Set up my laptop. Reviewed every minute of footage from the last 10 days. And what I found turned my stomach into knots. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. The man had been to the house 3 times. Always between noon and 4. Always on days she claimed she was working late or running errands. Once she even wore the blue dress she told me was in storage. She'd lied just to lie. For sport. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how normal they were. How casual. The routine. He'd come in, kick off his shoes, and she'd greet him like a husband coming home. He helped himself to food in our fridge, our plates, our cutlery. She poured him drinks in the whiskey glasses my father gave me before he passed. They joked about a neighbor, laughed at something on her phone. They looked like a couple who'd been living together for years. It was a theater I hadn't bought tickets to. So I did what anyone with shattered trust and too much time does. I dug deeper. I pulled phone records, cross-checked her work trips with her location history on our shared cloud account. I found texts, hundreds of them stored in iCloud, carelessly synced from her old phone. I read them until my eyes dried out. They didn't just talk. They planned. They coordinated. Code names. Inside jokes. She'd saved him as L in her contacts, just the letter buried in a folder with work numbers. Genius. Deceptive. Disgusting. They even joked about me. Me. One message dated just 2 days ago. He still thinks I'm at that wine thing. He's so gullible it's almost cute. L replied, bet he's at home folding your laundry like a good little husband. I didn't even feel anger then. Not yet. Just vacancy. Like my personality had been drained through a crack in my spine. But then came the detail that broke the dam. On one of the clips from Friday 3 days before, I saw him sitting at my kitchen table using my laptop. My laptop. And later I checked the device history. This bastard had logged into a guest profile. Used my Wi-Fi. Searched for flights to Florida. And she sat beside him. Laughing. Sipping coffee from the mug I gave her on our 3rd anniversary. That's when the shaking started. I don't even remember grabbing the phone. My fingers moved on their own. I texted her. Just 2 words. When are you home? She replied instantly. Couple hours. Why? I didn't answer. I sat in the living room in silence with the footage open in the background. Just waiting. Not for her. For the part of myself that still needed her to lie to my face. Because I wanted to see it. In person. No more guessing. No more blurred lines. I wanted her to look me in the eyes and choose. And God help me, she did. The door opened at 6:14 p.m. She came in like nothing was wrong, keys in one hand, grocery bag in the other, humming a tune I didn't recognize. She didn't see me right away. I was sitting on the armrest of the couch, lights off, laptop closed, phone face down on the coffee table. Just watching her move. She froze the moment she noticed me. Not in shock. More like recalibration. Like a chess player realizing the board had changed. Oh, she said, blinking like she needed to stall for time. You're home early. Her tone was wrong. Too light. Too casual. That was the opening line she went with? I didn't respond. Just looked at her. Let the silence do the talking. She shifted the bag in her hand. I grabbed stuff for dinner, a chicken and that sauce you like. You hungry? Still nothing from me. Just stillness. It started to unnerve her. I saw her fingers twitch, tightening slightly around the bag. Her eyes darted to the side, probably checking if I had my phone in my hand. Her mouth moved again before she could stop it. Did something happen? Finally I spoke. My voice was low. Steady. Yeah. Something happened. I stood up, walked slowly to the kitchen counter, pulled out my phone, tapped the screen twice, and turned the volume up. Then I hit play. The footage started. There she was 2 days ago, walking in with L. Laughing. Tossing her purse down. Wrapping her arms around his neck. His hand running up her back like it belonged there. My living room. My home. Her face drained of color. Just like that. No fake smile now. Just wide, darting eyes. A pulse ticking in her jaw. And then she did what only a certain kind of person would do in that moment. She scoffed. She scoffed. You went through my stuff? You spied on me. I stared at her. That's your first reaction? She dropped the grocery bag, apples rolled out, a bottle of wine thudded onto the tile. She wasn't blinking now, her voice rising, sharp, cutting. You installed cameras behind my back? That's disgusting, controlling, crazy. I cut her off. Don't you dare try to flip this. You've been bringing him into our house. Over and over. Drinking from our glasses. Sleeping in our bed. She flinched not at the accusation, but at the realization I knew it all. Then she went cold. Just like that. Like a switch had been flipped. The fear in her eyes vanished, replaced by that detached indifference I hadn't seen before but now understood had always been there. Just better hidden. Well, if you already know, she said, voice dead flat, then what do you want me to say? I stepped back. The truth. She rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. Then she leaned against the counter like she was bored. Fine. You want the truth, she said, arms crossed. Yes, I've been seeing someone. Yes, I brought him here. And no, I don't feel bad. Not really. You've been coasting for years, Eric. You check out the moment I walk in. You're more in love with your routines than with me. My chest was tight. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You could have left, I said quietly. Maybe, she shrugged. But it was easier this way. Less drama. You never noticed anything anyway. I noticed everything, I said. You just stopped caring if I did. That got her. Just for a second. Something flickered behind her eyes. Guilt? No, annoyance. Frustration that the mask had cracked. She grabbed her phone. I'm not doing this right now. Don't bother calling him, I said. I blocked his number on your phone. And I wiped the guest profile from my laptop. He's locked out. Her hand froze midair. That's when she dropped the act. Her voice dropped an octave. You think you can control this now? You think you're in charge? You're pathetic. And then she walked past me. Straight to the hallway. Into the bedroom. Slammed the door. I didn't follow. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the wine bottle on the floor, wondering how someone could walk into a confrontation with 1,000 knives pointed at them and still find a way to cut you instead. She wasn't scared. She wasn't sorry. She was calculating. And this wasn't over. I didn't move for a long time. The house felt off. Like it had grown smaller in the last 5 minutes. The walls were too close. The ceiling too low. Every surface tainted by what I just seen, what I just heard. I picked up the wine bottle, still intact somehow, and set it on the counter like it mattered. Like anything she touched hadn't already become radioactive. From the bedroom I could hear drawers opening. Hangers sliding. She was packing. Good. Let her. I walked to the door and locked it. Not out of fear she'd run, but because I needed time. Not another scene. Just time. I sat back on the armrest of the couch and stared at the hallway. Waiting. 12 minutes later she came out. Duffel bag over her shoulder. Phone in her hand. Hair tied back like she was going to the gym. She didn't look at me at first. Didn't speak. Just walked straight for the door. But I stopped her with one sentence. So who is he? That froze her. She didn't turn around. Just stood there with her back to me, one hand on the doorknob. Then slowly she pivoted. What does it matter? You said you've been seeing him. So how long? Who is he? Tell me what I gave up 7 years for. She tilted her head, studied me like I was a child asking a dumb question. You want details? You want to compare yourself? You want a timeline so you can feel better about whatever story you've built in your head. Answer me. She sighed. Actually sighed. Like this was exhausting for her. His name's Luke, she said. We met at that corporate retreat last summer. He's smart. Ambitious. Talks about things other than which brand of detergent's on sale. And he doesn't hover. Luke, I repeated. So all those times you were stuck in meetings, that was him? Some of them, she shrugged. Did you ever think about telling me? No, she said without hesitation. You wouldn't have handled it. You would have begged. Gotten pathetic. It was easier like this. Easier. Like betrayal was just a scheduling decision. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because it was that or scream. She raised an eyebrow at the sound. What's so funny? You. Standing there like you're still in control of the situation. I am, she said, cool as glass. I've already moved on. You're the one sitting in the dark with cameras and questions. That stung. Not because it was true, but because part of me wanted to believe she could be reasoned with. That she might still recognize what she'd done. But there was nothing left to recognize. This wasn't a woman who had made a mistake. This was someone who had chosen. Deliberately. Repeatedly. I stood up, walked toward her slowly. You're not taking the car, I said. She blinked. Excuse me. You heard me. I paid for it. You're not driving off in something I bought while you were entertaining him in our kitchen. She opened her mouth to protest. But I was already holding up a small device, one she hadn't noticed tucked in my palm. The spare key fob. I clicked the lock button. The car outside beeped. Locked. She stared at me, eyes narrowing. You really think this is going to end with you winning? No, I said. I think it ends with you walking. And me watching. She said nothing for a moment. Then, with a bitter smirk, she dropped the duffel on the floor. You'll regret this, she said. I already do. She pushed past me, slammed the door behind her so hard the frame shook. And just like that, she was gone. No apology. No tears. No turning back. But I knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. The silence after she left wasn't peaceful. It was electric. Alive with the aftershock of what had just happened. My heart was still pounding, but I couldn't tell if it was rage or adrenaline or the sudden emptiness that echoed through the house like a scream trapped in a jar. She was gone, yes. But her presence clung to everything. Her jacket still on the hook. Her shoes by the door. A single mug in the sink, lipstick smudged, still warm. I stood there in the aftermath, surrounded by the artifacts of a life we'd built that now felt like a museum exhibit. Carefully curated. Completely false. I paced. Didn't know what else to do. Every time I sat down, I felt like I was sinking. So I moved. I opened drawers she used. Looked at things she touched. Found a handwritten grocery list with a note at the bottom. Don't forget to pick up wine for Friday night. Friday night. That was the day she brought him in here. Something in me snapped. I went to the bedroom. Tore open her nightstand drawer, not even sure what I was looking for. But I found something. A small notebook. One of those fake leather ones she always kept for to-do lists, goals, plans. Only this one wasn't filled with chores or schedules. It was personal. Pages of thoughts, moments, scribbled half-sentences. At first, it was mundane stuff. Notes about work. An idea for a weekend getaway. A recipe. Then it shifted. Page after page describing him. Not me him. How Luke made her feel seen. How there's a silence with Eric now, not angry, just tired. How it's like living with a ghost who makes good coffee. And worse. I think I'm already gone. My body just hasn't caught up yet. I read that line 5 times before I dropped the notebook. It hit the floor with a dull thud, and the sound might as well have been a gunshot. She hadn't just cheated. She disappeared long before she ever walked out the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands like they weren't mine. Like maybe there was a version of me that had seen all this coming and done something differently. But the truth is, I hadn't just missed the signs, I'd ignored them. I'd convinced myself that silence meant comfort, that routine meant love, that stability was enough to keep someone interested. But it wasn't. Not for her. A phone buzzed. Mine. A text. Unknown number. She's with me now. Let her go. I stared at the message, unblinking. No name. No context. Just that. I knew it was him. Luke. The audacity of it. The sheer nerve. I wanted to reply. Wanted to send him everything. The footage. The texts. The notebook. I wanted to destroy her illusions, ruin their little fantasy built on betrayal. But I didn't. Instead, I saved the number. Named it Coward. Then I opened my email and sent the footage to a secure drive. Copied the files. Backed everything up. Not for revenge, at least not yet, but for proof. For clarity. For the next time she tried to spin the story her way. Because she would. I knew her too well. She'd be back. Not to apologize. But to reclaim something. Her shoes. Her files. Her control. Whatever it was, she'd come. And when she did, I'd be ready. She came back 2 days later. Not with an apology. Not even a knock. She used her key. I was in the kitchen, drinking cold coffee and scrolling through an inbox that had exploded with messages from friends and family asking if I was okay or needed anything. Someone had told someone. News travels fast when it's dipped in scandal. I heard the door open. The unmistakable sound of her boots on the hardwood. Calm. Intentional. She didn't call out. Didn't announce herself. She walked into the living room like she still owned the place. I didn't look up. Not at first. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like she was inspecting damage. I'm just here to get a few things, she said, voice cool, measured, like this was a business transaction. I took a sip of coffee. You don't live here anymore. That made her blink. Just a flicker, but it was there. This is still my house too, she said, stepping inside. No. It's a place you used to be faithful in. Now it's just an address you'll be leaving. She exhaled sharply through her nose, half scoff, half laugh. You're really doing this? Drawing battle lines? I looked up. You already did. I'm just outlining them. She shook her head and walked past me. Straight to the bedroom. As she passed, I could smell that same damn perfume. The one she never wore for me. The one I'd come to associate with betrayal. I followed her, not because I had anything left to say, but because I didn't trust her alone in any room anymore. She opened the closet, grabbed a suitcase from the top shelf, started pulling clothes off hangers. Not a word. Just that surgical efficiency she used when pretending feelings were optional. You packed light the first time, I said from the doorway. She didn't pause. Didn't think you'd be so dramatic? Right, I nodded. Silly me. Getting dramatic about you turning our house into a hotel room for your side guy. She finally turned, holding a handful of dresses. Is this what you're going to do now? Be the bitter ex? Play the victim? You are not going to rewrite this like I'm some insecure loser who drove you into someone else's bed. Her voice dropped into something colder. I didn't need a reason. You weren't the problem. You just weren't enough anymore. That landed. Not because it hurt, but because it finally exposed the root. She hadn't cheated because something was missing in us. She cheated because there was something broken in her. And this was her way of hiding it. I leaned against the doorframe. You think he's going to fix you? I don't need fixing, she snapped. I need freedom. Freedom from what? Love? Stability? Someone who would have done anything for you. From this, she said, waving her hand at the house. The routines. The predictability. The slow death of who I used to be. She zipped the suitcase violently. The sound cut the air like a whip. I didn't answer. There was no point. You can't argue with someone who's already decided to set fire to everything and blame the ashes on you. She rolled the suitcase past me. You'll get over it, she said as she passed. You always do. At the front door, she paused. Looked back at me. I'll send someone for the rest. Then she walked out. I locked the door behind her. Not just because it was the right thing to do, but because the next time she wanted in, she'd need more than a key. The next morning, I woke up to silence so complete it was almost violent. The bed was still warm on one side, her scent still lingering in the fabric. I stared at the ceiling, trying to summon the familiar numbness again, the one that had been keeping me upright. But something had changed. The silence didn't feel like emptiness anymore, it felt like space. I got up, showered, dressed without thinking. No texts. No calls. No threats or new apologies. Just static. I sat down at the dining table with my laptop and opened the surveillance footage again, not to torture myself, but to finish it. To finish the story. I clicked through more clips. Day by day. Detail by detail. There was one from a week ago I hadn't fully watched. The one where they stayed for hours. They sat together on the couch, her legs over his lap. They weren't talking. Just sitting. He looked bored. She kept checking her phone. There was no spark. No passion. Just routine. Just exactly what she claimed I'd turned into. They weren't in love. They weren't even happy. That's when the idea formed, not out of spite. Out of clarity. I emailed the footage to myself under a clean label. Property recordings, legal use. Then I made a second copy and stored it on an encrypted drive. If she ever tried to come after me, if she tried to spin this into some sad tale of emotional abandonment or gaslight me through mutual friends, I'd be ready. I wasn't going to use it to punish her. I was going to use it to protect myself. That afternoon I boxed up the rest of her things. I didn't toss them. I didn't damage anything. I labeled the boxes. Neat. Precise. Cold. At 6 p.m. I texted her. Your stuff is packed. It'll be outside until 9. After that it goes in storage. No response. At 7:20 a car pulled up. Not hers. He got out. Luke. I watched from the window hidden behind the curtain. He looked like the type who thought good posture was a personality. He moved fast, probably afraid I'd come out. Grabbed the boxes like they were toxic and shoved them in the trunk. He didn't even look at the house. Didn't have the guts. I waited until he drove off before stepping outside. The spot where her car used to sit was empty. It looked cleaner now somehow. Like something heavy had been lifted. I went back in. Closed the door. That night I deleted her number. Not because I wanted to forget her, but because I needed to remember what she'd become. There's a difference. And I was finally starting to learn it. It was a Thursday when she finally broke the silence. I just finished changing the locks, something that should have felt triumphant but instead felt like changing bandages on a wound that still bled. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. But I knew it was her. The message was simple. You really locked me out? After everything? I didn't answer. She followed it with another. So this is how we end? Like strangers? That one almost got me. Almost. Because we weren't strangers. That would have been easier. Strangers don't share couches and toothbrushes and years of late-night laughs. Strangers don't know which drawer holds the good scissors or how you like your eggs. No, this wasn't a stranger. This was betrayal wearing a familiar face. 3 hours later, she showed up at my work. Not yelling. Not crying. Calm. Collected. She waited outside the building like she'd just come for coffee. My coworker Greg let me know she was out front with a casual, "Hey, your wife's here. Everything okay?" Wife. I hadn't heard that word in days. It landed like a punch. I stepped outside. She was leaning against her car now, his car. I recognized it from the footage. The smug little Audi with the dented passenger side. She smiled when she saw me. I didn't return it. I just want to talk, she said, taking a step forward. Too late for that. Her smile faltered. You don't even want to hear what I have to say? You already said it. In her house. With him. She crossed her arms, the confidence starting to slip. You're being cruel. No. I'm being done. She exhaled hard, biting back something, anger maybe, or pride. I made a mistake, Eric. Which part? Letting him in? Lying to my face? Mocking me in your texts? Or sending him to collect your things like I was beneath you? Her face twisted for the first time. You don't get to moralize. You were never present. You disappeared long before I did. There it was. The excuse. The pivot. I didn't flinch. You know what's wild? I said. You had every chance to leave. To walk away clean. But instead, you chose to turn our marriage into a rehearsal space for your new act. She looked away, jaw clenched. You think you've upgraded, I said. But you didn't. You just downgraded to someone who tolerates lies because he benefits from them. She opened her mouth. Closed it again. Then she said something I didn't expect. He's not who I thought he was. I stared at her. Not my problem anymore. Her eyes dropped to the ground. That was the first time I'd seen it regret. Not sorrow. Not guilt. But that quiet, creeping realization that she might have thrown away something solid for something shiny and hollow. She looked up at me, and for the briefest moment, she wasn't the version of herself I'd come to loathe. She was the one I used to love. Scared. Human. Flawed. I'm not asking for us to go back, she said. I just don't want to be hated. I nodded once. Then maybe you should have acted like someone who deserved to be remembered better. She stepped back. I guess this is goodbye then. No, I said. This is the part where I finally get to live without wondering if the person next to me is pretending. And I walked away. She didn't follow. 2 weeks passed. Long enough for the dust to settle, but not long enough for anything to feel real yet. It was a strange limbo. My house was quiet. My routine sharper. I started sleeping better, not longer, but deeper, like my body was finally convinced the battlefield had been cleared. Still, every now and then, I'd reach for a mug she used or open a drawer and find one of her stupid scented tea lights shoved in the back, and it would all come back like a wave slapping me in the face. But there was no more anger. Just understanding. I started seeing the pattern of it all, how many times I'd excused the inexcusable. How often she'd used silence as a weapon, guilt as currency. How blind I'd been to the erosion happening right under my feet. Love didn't leave in a storm, it leaked through the ceiling one drop at a time until the floorboards gave out. It wasn't just that she'd cheated. It's that she strategized it. I realized that when I got a message from her mother. We'd never been close. Amanda always kept her family at arm's length from me, claiming they were complicated. But her mom had reached out once or twice over the years. This message was different. Short. Blunt. Heard what happened. She's not the person I raised. I'm sorry. I sat with that message for a long time. It confirmed something I'd suspected. Amanda had burned more bridges than just ours. There were scorch marks everywhere. Later that night, I got an email. Not from her. From him. Luke. I stared at the name for a full minute before opening it. I don't expect a response. But I needed to say something. I didn't know the full story. She told me you were separated. Said you'd both agreed to stay under the same roof while sorting things out. I didn't learn the truth until after that day I picked up her things. She left out a lot. I ended things. Not that it matters now. I guess I just wanted you to hear it from me. Whatever damage was done, I added to it. I own that. No groveling. No defensiveness. Just a flat, quiet confession. And weirdly, it didn't satisfy me. Because his betrayal was collateral. He'd been handed a script and he'd read it. Bad judgment, sure. But Amanda had been the director, the casting agent, and the producer. Every lie came from her mouth. Every scene was staged by her hands. And now? She was alone. I knew that because a mutual friend, someone I hadn't even spoken to since college, texted me out of nowhere. Dude. Saw Amanda at Trenton's party. She looked like a ghost. Didn't say much. Just sat in the corner. I didn't ask for details. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message, wondering if this was the end of the story or just the end of her role in mine. I walked through the house later that evening. Not to wallow, not to remember. Just to see it. It looked different now. Cleaner. Sharper. The shadows didn't whisper anymore. The air didn't feel held hostage. This was mine again. My house. My rules. My peace. And nothing, not her perfume, not her ghost, not her regret, could claim a single inch of it back. It was a Sunday morning, bright, cloudless, unassuming, the kind that used to mean brunch and errands. Meaningless little rituals that now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I brewed coffee. Sat on the porch. Watched the street wake up. There was no script anymore. No need to measure my words or anticipate hers. My thoughts were mine again. That was the real shift. Not that she was gone, but that her voice no longer lived rent-free in my head. People talk about closure like it's this clean thing, like a signed document or a final scene in a movie. But closure isn't loud. It's subtle. It's the absence of wait. The moment you realize you're not waiting for an apology or a text or the impossible miracle of someone becoming what you once needed them to be. It's just stillness. I thought about what I'd learned not just about her, but about myself. I'd ignored instincts. I'd tolerated disrespect dressed up as sarcasm. I'd let myself be minimized day by day until I was surviving instead of living. And the truth? It wasn't just her betrayal that hurt. It was realizing how long I'd been betraying myself, settling, justifying, pretending I was okay with being an afterthought. Never again. Not out of bitterness. Out of discipline. I started going to the gym again. Not to get back at her. Just to reconnect with the version of me that gave a damn about feeling strong. I reconnected with old friends. One of them, a guy I hadn't spoken to since our wedding, invited me to his cabin for a weekend of hiking and actual conversation. I said yes. Not out of spite. Out of freedom. She'd try one more time. A message. Short. Careful. Hope you're okay. If you ever want to talk. I stared at it for a while. Then deleted it. No anger. No reply. She'd had 1,000 chances to talk. To be honest. To choose the hard conversation over the easy escape. And she chose silence over and over until the silence answered her back. Now I live in a house that feels honest. A little emptier, yes, but peaceful. Real. The kind of place where the furniture isn't haunted and the air doesn't carry lies in its corners. If you're reading this, if you're wondering whether your instincts are right, trust them. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. Love doesn't have to be perfect, but it damn well should feel safe. And if it doesn't, install the cameras. Not just to catch someone else, but to finally see the truth you've been avoiding. I did. And it saved me.